This conference will now be recorded.
Selenium PTD, REST assured, mobile automation, then load and performance testing, then visual automation, then all other technologies plus with Java, C#, Python, Ruby, then R language, multiple languages also I worked on. So parallelly with this, I have 2 patents on my name, and those are approved. And I did my education, that is B in computers technology, and later MBA in IT and in international business. So till now, I have, teach. There are near about 1,500 plus people in the field of test automation, and they got near about 800 plus, so 50% more people got placed into the field of test automation in a different organization. Also, some of those people are joined with us as an helping hand so that we can support others too. So I have a son and of course one wife. Okay, and this is overall about myself. So I like coding and to play with my son, that is also I liked a lot. Now, so why this session today is for the TestNG. Now, when we say talk about the TestNG, TestNG is nothing but a testing next generation. NG means it's a next generation framework. So TestNG is a framework which is on top of your NUnit and JUnit. NUnit is used for your C#, JUnit is used for your Java. So there are lack of some supports with the JUnit. So on top of that, TestNG is built, and TestNG supports to the unit test, integration test, functional test, and UI test, all other tests also. Now, when we talk about TestNG, the additional benefit of TestNG are the easy annotations, those supports to the TestNG.
Switch off your video. I can see one video there.
Guys, please do not talk. If you want, you can ping that on the chat window. Okay. Okay. So before, so there are different annotation which I said. There are before group, after group, which is not available into your Java, and that JUnit that is available in your TestNG. Now, if you can see my screen, there is a TestNG working architecture. So in the middle, if you can see, this is my TestNG class. So TestNG class is having my TestNG implementation, like the different annotations. So I'm going to show you how that TestNG is incorporated with any of the framework that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so let's say TestNG implementation. So in the test class, which is a TestNG class, which has a different test cases. So @test says it is nothing but my new test case. Now this TestNG class is taking some of the inputs from the DB, that is database, that is my data source, or CSV or Excel, any other data source, and that can be put into your class with the help of different wrapper classes. Like if I wanted to read something from the Excel, I do have the Excel reader class. If I want to read something from the DB, I have database reader class, likewise. Now, same way, this class works with the different annotation. So annotation like before test, after test, before method, after method, before suit, after suit, and before class, after class, before groups, after groups, and different types of annotations. This class works with that. So this class, before that class, it should work, and after that class, it gives something. So this is nothing but all the annotation we used for the setup. Annotations we are using for the setup. And now this setup, once you execute, that frees nothing but within your GitHub or Jenkins, and then final is your HTML report. Now this TestNG implementation required the reference libraries. Like if you wanted to work on Selenium, then you need the Selenium libraries. If you wanted to work on some other things, then those libraries, like these wrapper classes, these libraries required, the reference libraries required here. Now, after execution and everything, you will get your test execution report, which says your pass, fail, and number of steps and all others. This is the working TestNG architecture. Okay, so again I repeat, this is my TestNG class. This TestNG class take input, test data input from any of the data source like DB, CSV, XLS, XML, properties, and any other thing. Now TestNG class works with the different annotations. So annotation on top of every TestNG @test method. So this will work before and this will work after. So there are different things, those I'll explain. Now, for example, this is my one TestNG class. Now I wanted to execute a multiple TestNG class with the different test cases. So I need my TestNG.xml. This is nothing but my suite. Likewise, in manual testing, how we do have our test suite and how we maintain that, same way we do have the test suite here. So we can maintain this test suite, and this test suite can execute multiple test classes. Now, any business logic, any implementation requires some of the reference libraries. So these reference libraries are incorporated with your test classes. Like you can import your Selenium jars or Selenium packages and all other things. Once you execute this TestNG class, you will get your test execution report, and that says your how many test cases passed, failed, steps, and all of that. This is how your TestNG working architecture looks like, and this is how TestNG works. Now I'll show you how we can go with the TestNG with the Eclipse. Now let's say most of you are having your TestNG. Okay, so you have your TestNG here. Now, if you don't have TestNG on your Eclipse, so I hope you have the Eclipse version with your system. If you don't have Eclipse, then you can download Eclipse from the Google. Okay, you can download from Eclipse site and you can start. Now, how you can install TestNG? So you can go to Eclipse Marketplace. Okay, once you go back here, you can search any of the plugin which you require for your execution or for your any other work. So let's say I need a TestNG. I can search this TestNG. So on Eclipse Marketplace, you will get all the plugins, additional plugins. Okay. So if you can see here TestNG for Eclipse, I can see here TestNG for Eclipse. Once you can see TestNG for Eclipse, you just need to click on install. I have already installed TestNG on my system. That's why with my Eclipse, that's why I can see here installed. But if you don't have, you directly click here install and take the further step, that is next. You can accept the terms and condition, its terms and condition, and finish this. Once you restart, you can see TestNG within your Eclipse. So currently I can see installed. If you wanted to see if you have installed TestNG, you can go to your installed and you can find out TestNG is installed or not. That is also possible. So now other way, if you wanted to see if your TestNG is installed or not, you can go to your window preferences. You can see here as well your TestNG. Can you see here? The TestNG is available. Okay, by these are the different way by which you can come to know that TestNG is installed in your system. Okay, now I am going to start a new TestNG implementation, new TestNG project. So new and Java project. I'm giving the project name TestNG project, and I finish. So if you can see here, I do have SRC, I do have a JRE. JRE is nothing but Java installed on my machine, which is nothing but a system library to execute this Java project. These are required. That is a default JRE selected by me in my Eclipse. So SRC is nothing but your source folder. So always, whenever we talked about the source folder always starts with small letter. Okay, so like if the naming convention in Java, it is start with a small letter. Now I go back, create a new package in this source folder. So always package starts with small followed by the camel case. So let's say I'm creating here TestNG package. So I created a TestNG package, and that is my package naming convention says. Now this time I'm not going to create a basic Java class. I'm going to create a new TestNG class. Go back here and you can see here there is a TestNG. Once you can right click and say this is the TestNG. So there is a different way. If you can directly create from here, if you'll get TestNG class, but just now I installed, so you'll not get it here. This is your normal Java class, but if you wanted to install if you wanted to create a new TestNG class, you can go back here, other, select TestNG, and then TestNG class. Once you create, click on the next, you can see currently I am going to create a new TestNG class within this source folder, within this package, which is just now we created, and the TestNG class name. So the class name is basic TestNG class. Okay, so that we can see how it works. So if you can see here, there are different annotations. Annotations are well-defined rule for any of the framework. So now these are the well-defined rule. I'll explain each one of these annotations one by one. Also, I'll show you once the framework implementation, that time you came to know how it works. So let's say I said basic TestNG class. I selected all the annotations except data provider. I selected all annotation except data provider because it is nothing but a data source. I'm not going to use that data source as of now. So I selected this 8 annotation and I said finish. Once I say finish, I can see my basic TestNG class is created. If you want, I can make that more bigger. Just give me a second so that you can see it more clearer. Okay. So now if you can see, there is a TestNG class created, but with the errors. These are different errors we can see. So now we can go back to our project, right click, build path, and a configure build path. So we need to add a reference of the TestNG to this project. Then only it will identify there are a different TestNG annotation we are using. Till the point we are not added the reference of TestNGs, that's why we are getting errors here. If you can see, these are the errors. Okay, so I'm going back here to add library. I select TestNG. So we do have multiple plugins with my system, but if you want, we can select others, but currently we require TestNG. I selected TestNG, I click next, I click finish. So if you can see, libraries, TestNG libraries added here. I click apply and okay. If you can see, all the errors are gone. So there are multiple errors and multiple errors gone from this project. And also in this project, you can see there is a TestNG library, a reference library is added. Okay, now I'm making this bigger so that I can explain. So if you can see with this annotations package, we do have, these are the different implementation. These are different classes which we added, because every annotation requires some of the import, that is its implementation. Then only it will work its business logic. Okay, so same way the test, before method, after method, before class, and all others annotation which we have selected all came back here. Now I'm going to do a basic TestNG execution. So let's say this is my test. I wanted to create here a test case 1. So I'm giving the name, that is test case 1. Now what is @test? So @test says it is nothing but a new test case for me. @test annotation says it is nothing but a new test case for me. Wherever @test, that means before any method, if @test is mentioned, that is nothing but a new test case for me. I'll repeat again. If before any method or function If @test is mentioned, then this is nothing but a new test case for me. Okay, so that means I have created, for example, I'm copying this and pasting here, and I'm making this test C2. So that doesn't mean there are two test cases, because I again repeat, if before any method there is @test, then only it will treat as a test case. Before TC2 method, we don't have any @test. Till the point will not add @test, this is not a test case. This is plain method. Okay, so I'm removing this to avoid any confusion. So now this is my new test case. I'm just simply adding here my TC1. Okay, so this is my test case one. Now what is before method? Let's jump to the next annotation, that is before method. Before method says this annotation will help you. Okay, for all other annotation, these are nothing but a setup for my test case. This is my test case. Now before method will work before each @test. That means before method will execute before each @test. That means if I do have two test cases, then before method will execute before two test cases two times. That means before each test case it will execute, then before test case 2 again it will execute. So I'll write here before each test method. Okay, same way if we can go back to the next annotation, that is after method. So very similar, after method will execute after each @test. After method will execute after each @test. So that means if there are two test cases, after method will execute two times. So again, I'm writing, there is a specific reason behind this, so that once we execute, you came to know how many times which annotation is executed. So I'm going to write after each test method. Okay. Now the next annotation says your before class. Now before class is my annotation which says this will execute before my first @test execute from the current class. That means if in this class there are 10 test cases, then before all 10 test cases, before class will execute only once. Before all @test from the current class, before class will execute only once. Okay, so currently in this case, if before class I have one test case and there is only one class, so before class will execute only once before this class starts any execution of the test cases. So I will write here, before class. Okay, so before class will execute only once before all test cases should be start from the current class. Same way, after class will execute only once before all test cases from the current class should execute. Okay. Now, very important, that is before test. Most of the time in interview, people are asking you question about before test and before method, and we are confusing ourselves in this term because this is here before test, and we said before test will execute before each test, which is wrong. So before test will execute before all @test. Before test will execute before all @test. That means if I have class 1, 2, 3, 4 and every class is having two test cases, still before test will execute only once before all those test cases should execute. Okay, but before method will execute before each @test. So now before test, if I have 10 test cases, still it will execute only once before all @test. So I can say here I am in before test. So same way, like after test will execute only once after all at test execute. Now, the important again, that is your last, that is before suit. Now, before suit is annotation which will execute before your suit to be executed. Let's say I have a suit where I do have 10 classes we executed. So all before, let's say I have to set up something like before executing all the classes, I wanted to set up like my database, like in my architecture how I show. So I wanted to load all my wrapper classes where I wanted to load all my test data. So those setup I can do within my before suit. Before I can execute, I can run those things. So I'm in before suit. Once I execute, I'll make it more clear to you. Okay, but now after suit will execute, after your suit executes, and it will generate a test report, and then it will show you the test report. So this is my basic class where I have my test case. I have before method, before class, before test, and before suit. Please keep yourself on mute, please. Okay. So this is how I have developed, written my basic class. Now I'm right clicking and running this TestNG test. So before that, if you can try any of the time you wanted to execute your Java class, you will see there is a Java application, run as a Java application. But here I can see run as a TestNG test. I can see run as a TestNG test. So I'm simply running my TestNG test. It will say to save. Okay, it started execution, and if you can see my execution is complete. I wanted to show you the output. See, there is a question in interview. Can you tell me the execution hierarchy of a TestNG annotations? That is a question in interview. So if you can see, before everything, my before suit execute first, then my before test execute, then my before class execute, then my before method execute, and then my test case execute. Then after method, after class, after test, and I told you after generating the default test results, then execute your after suit, and then it will generate your after suit or results. Okay, I'll repeat again. Interview question that says, what is your execution hierarchy of TestNG annotation? So always before suit execute first, then before test, then before class, before method, then test, then after method, after class, after test, and after suit. This is my execution hierarchy. Now, before I said if I have two test cases, now how this execution work, that we can see here. So I'm just copying and paste another cases here. If you want to see what I did, before that I have only one test case. This time I have test case 2 also. Now we wanted to see how many times before method execute, how many times before class, how many times before test will execute. Okay, so now we can save these and rerun our code one more time. Once we execute, this time we came to know how many times before method execute. There is no other impact on any other, but we can see. Okay. See here, I told you before test, before suit is first, then again before suit, again before class. But what we said, the before method will execute before each test method. So before method will execute before first test case, after method, after first test case. Again before method will execute before test case 2, after method execute after test case 2. Okay, very simple. Again, I'm repeating. So if you can see here, before method will execute 2 times, because there are two test cases. So before method will execute before each add test, and after method will execute after each add test. Now how we can do a setup for before method before test in our current test?